Hello, anti-novelists, friends, Lilligans, curious onlookers, everyone. Welcome to the library for this episode of Zettelkasten for fiction writers, where imagination finds order. So let's jump right into creating some order. I am going to be creating an entire course on how to Zettelkasten a work of fiction. But I've gotten many questions about this since I posted that video before I left on my trip about how you do this for a work of fiction. So I'm going to give you an overview so that you can be chewing on this until such a time that I can get that course hammered out for you. That course, incidentally, will follow the publication of my Zettelkasten for Fiction Writers book. So I'm thinking in the spring, I should have that all put together and ready to go. But because you guys are my favorite, you get a little sneak peek into what this process is going to look like. So let's just take it from a high level and let me show you an overview of how to Zettelkasten a work of fiction. Okay, so we're going to take a story that we all know and love. I will be doing this with more current works of fiction from authors that I personally love who are living and writing right now. But for this example, I'm going to take The Wizard of Oz, the wonderful Wizard of Oz book published in 1900 by L. Frank Baum. Since it's one we all know, it's an easy example. So what you're looking at is my initial bib card. So I would have you create this for whatever work of fiction that you're reading. And then you're going to create what I call your resources card. A resources card is all of the high-level details that you might want to know and refer back to after having read a book. So I've labeled it resources. I've added what's the point of view, okay? The wonderful Wizard of Oz book written by L. Frank Baum is written in third-person omniscient, and I'm going to have some exercises for you that help you figure out how to know what that is so you can fill it in. What is the time? It's written in the past tense. What is the main character? Our main character is Dorothy, and I've made a note to myself that she's an orphan. So these are just little quick snapshots of what's going on in this book when you sit down to start reading it. I've made an entry for symbols, which I've not filled out yet, because if I haven't read the book yet, I don't know what the symbols are. And then theme. At a high level, themes prevalent in the Wizard of Oz book are home and a journey or an adventure, and self-reliance or inner strengths. So I've just made a couple of jottings about those things. Now, here is where the fun starts. One of the first things that I'm going to have you do is I'm going to ask you to draw out the plot structure of the book that you're reading. Now, granted, you may not know this ahead of time. So this plot card might just be a blank placeholder until such a time as you have read through the book and you can start identifying those plot points. Again, I'm going to give you tips and exercises for how to do this, but for our purposes, let's just take a look at what this looks like. So, first of all, down here, I've got a number 1, and that is where my introduction goes. This is diving into the existing world of the book that you're reading. So in the case of The Wizard of Oz, we know that Dorothy and Toto live on a farm in Kansas. So on my plot details card, which is my /1, which corresponds to my number 1 on my plot card, I'm going to write in that Dorothy and Toto live on a farm in Kansas. Okay, so see how this goes? You plot the structure out on your key map card, and then you're going to go card by card, and you're going to detail out those things. So I'm going to leave these because these are part of the instruction for later, and I'm just going to walk you through what it looks like on your plot card, on your modeling card, if you will. So what is the second thing that happens? Well, first of all, let's look at this structure. You've got the world as it exists, meeting Dorothy and Toto on a farm in Kansas. And then see how all of these dots go upward? This is what we would call in a classic 3-act structure, the rising action. In some structures, you're going to break this down and call it trial and error or enemies and allies. There's a whole lot of things that get packed into this rising structure. But for our simple overview, because let's just say this is your first pass through a book, you just want to get it down on a card, You're just going to model out what does that basic structure look like. And essentially, it's all of the challenges and adventures leading up to a climax, and that results in your resolution. But, dun dun dun, in The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, we have 2 twists. So let's blast through this and see what that story looks like. So, the first item, which is plot point number 2 in the rising action, is the cyclone, right? So the cyclone strikes and carries off Dorothy and Toto and dumps them, plot point 3, in Oz. That's where her house is dumped down when the cyclone lets her out of the winds, ba-boom. Now she's in Oz. The next plot point is she crushes the Wicked Witch of the East, okay? So already there is some inciting incident action, a key event. All of those things that we talk about in plot structure are happening right here in these early plot points. So the next thing that happens is Dorothy and Toto step out into the Technicolor land of the Munchkins, okay? So they're meeting friends and allies, discovering this new world they've landed in. The next thing that happens is the Witch of the North gives Dorothy the protective kiss, which if you've seen the movie, that's not in there, that's in the book. And the Witch of the North also gives Dorothy the silver slippers. In the book, they're not ruby, people, they're silver slippers. But the movie company said, oh, hey, since we're doing it in Technicolor, ruby red would be way cooler to look at. Silver might get lost in the movie, so let's make them red. So there's a little trivia for you. Anyway, back to our story. So the witch gives Dorothy the shoes, and Dorothy and Toto set out for the Emerald City, okay? They're friends and allies. She's meeting the Scarecrow, the Cowardly Lion, the Tin Man, and so forth. So, friends and allies meeting up with your people. Next thing that happens is the travelers, all together, newly friended, arrive at Emerald City. Now, this is where they encounter the great and powerful Oz. So he is set up to be the go-to for what they need to do. So he tells them they have to kill the Wicked Witch of the West. So action ensues, challenges, craziness, and the Wicked Witch of the West captures Dorothy, Toto, and the lion. All right, so see how that is building up into our climax, okay? So it's just friends, challenges, and trials, throwing everything we can at this little ragtag group of people and critters, poking them in their weak spots, and continuing to lord over them this wicked witch that is obviously out to get them. So the climax is when Dorothy, our hapless heroine, kills the Wicked Witch of the West. But what is the twist that happens after they kill the Wicked Witch of the West and go back to see the wizard? The wizard is discovered to be just a man. He's not a wizard at all. He's just a guy with a hot air balloon. So that is what you would consider the first twist in the declining action towards the resolution. So then Oz leaves the country without Dorothy, essentially abandoning her. And she is advised to go find Glenda because Dorothy and her friends need to figure out how to get her home, right? The whole goal here is how to get home. So here we have another twist. When Dorothy finds Glenda, the good witch, Glenda says, yo, Dorothy, the silver shoes will take you home. You always had the power to go home. Well, that, my friends, is the second twist, because she could have always gone home. She could have avoided all of this nonsense had only she been given the key piece, which is clicking her heels and the shoes take her home in 3 steps. But that's what makes it a great story. You have to go through the trials in order to get to the answer. And the resolution, of course, is Dorothy and Toto arrive back at home where Aunt Em, the beaten down, beloved aunt, discovers that she loves Dorothy like her own child, even though she was a little crass in the beginning. Dorothy is welcomed home to a loving, caring, welcoming family. And that is our resolution. So, as you go through this process and you start ticking off those little beats, those pieces of the story that unfold as you read, you're just filling those in to get a sense of what does that structure look like? Maybe the structure goes up towards a mini climax and then your character is thrown down in the dirt and then they rise up again. There's a story structure identified for that. What if your character has several ups and downs? Like there's 5 or 6 of those little babies and they win and then they lose and they win and then they lose. There's a story structure for that. And I'm going to walk you through each and every one of those in the book Zettelkasten for Fiction. But I hope this gives you a sense of what this process looks like, because once you've lined out the key pieces of the story that you're reading, then you're just going to transfer those onto your plot cards so that they correspond to your plot model. And that's how you go through then and fill in alternate characters, alternate things such as symbols or additional theme elements that are discussed. This is how you Zettelkast in a work of fiction. So that is just your first taste of where we're headed when we get over to how to apply this system to reading a work of fiction. I'm also going to take you through how to do it for short fiction and even for microfiction. We're just going to unpack it all into our cards so that those of you who are my beloved readers and lovers of reading books, you can partake in the fun of the Zettelkasten by simply applying your cards to the book that you're reading. So I will leave you there for today. I hope you enjoyed this walk down memory lane with the beloved, wonderful Wizard of Oz. And tomorrow we will pick up and continue working our way through this crazy thing called Zettelkasten for Fiction Writers and how to apply it to your own process. So thank you as always. I appreciate each and every one of you for joining me on this journey, and I will see you all tomorrow.